Welcome back, everyone. Expert Insights, another episode here with Ms. Sue Woodard. Sue, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about trust and talking about the fact that you can't advertise your way to trust, although a lot of people try.
Think about a lot of brands try to do that, don't
Absolutely. And this was, it was one of the highlights that I got out of our buddy Ron Shevlin's book, Smarter Bank. And it's interesting because this really pertains to any kind of company, a lender, a bank, a credit union. And what he talks about in the book is really, how do you gain trust or how do you lose trust? And it speaks to, one of the things that you say all the time. Yeah. In fact, you can say it, which I love. It's one of my favorite quotes.
Every interaction with your brand or your people either builds trust or erodes it.
Right. Because it's just so true, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought about that when I was reading this section. And one of the things he talked about here is the way that you can build trust as a financial institution, a financial brand with your customers is with competency and clarity, responsibility and transparency, honesty and sincerity. And again, this is coming from data and surveys that they've pulled out where they've said these are really the things that help people build trust in their financial institution.
Yeah. I mean, it's really so powerful to the comments that he's made around that. And if you think about just the authenticity side and having empathy for your customer, meeting them where they're at in the financial journey, and then having not just your automated messaging and communication, but actually having the person that's able to deliver that level of sincerity in many cases that you're not going to get from just an app.
Right.
And a lot of the more complex financial transactions, if you take all the PPP lending and all the mortgage refinancing and all the new homes that have been purchased, and those are transactions to where there is a human being involved in a lot of parts of that journey.
Right.
And I think you can execute on a lot of those things if you have that planned out and really systemized as part of the process.
Operationalized, right? We've talked about like operationalizing empathy and operationalizing excellence. And what systems are you putting in place? What journeys are you putting in place in order to ensure that you're building that trust? Because you're simply doing what you say you're going to do.
If you don't have a plan to do those things, we can tell you exactly what's going to happen. That is a whole smattering and smorgasbord of all kinds of different interactions.
Yep.
So the failure to not have a plan in place to take on each step in those journeys is not a pretty sight.
So he goes on and he talks a little bit about, again, what came from the studies about what causes people to distrust their financial institutions. And he says insufficient skill, knowledge, and experience, low moral or ethical standards, experiencing problems, and then just flat out dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
There's I think people sometimes just underestimate that, people want, they expect a lot. It's their money that we're talking about, right?
And I know from talking to a lot of consumers, we've done a lot of research work on our own, in addition to some of the organizations that we partner with, and a lot of it is there wasn't clarity, there wasn't explanation, there wasn't education around what I was buying, what product I was getting into. So you think about it, right? A lot of it wraps around communication.
That's right.
And how are you over-delivering on the way your customer wants and expects to be communicated with?
That's right.
It's harder than it sounds, but it's really critical that you've mastered that, both with your business to the consumer, but also your people that are communicating with your customers. Right. Do they have what they need to be able to execute?
And it's all about the journey, right? And we've talked a lot about customer experience and making sure that what does that experience look like? Have you mapped it out? And if you have mapped it out, you probably are due to remap it out again. Yeah. We've got some new environment that we're operating in. And it's not something, again, that you can advertise your way to building.
And it's constantly evolving because the world is evolving. And what was relevant and important to a consumer 6 months ago is probably very different today. And so we've always been of the belief that you have to be looking at, if you want to build the perfect customer journeys, you have to look at them all the time and iterate on them frequently.
Exactly.
Because things change and evolve.
That's right. And so bottom line, can't advertise your way to trust, but there's a lot of ways to build trust. Again, using, as you said, all the tools, the technologies.
Trust is everything.
Trust is everything. How do you operationalize it? How do you make it happen?